Hey, Crossview Church. I just wanted to bring you into something that I've been wrestling with and a question that's popped up that I wanted to talk about. I was in a conversation with someone recently, and they talked about how their point of view was that the effectiveness of the church has decreased during this pandemic. And they started to talk about things like how you can't, when you go to church, it's not how it used to be, and you can't really feel it. And it wasn't anybody who goes to our church, it was somebody who goes to a different church. But they talked about just how the church worldwide, in their opinion, the effectiveness has decreased during this time of pandemic. And that made me think, has this pandemic caused the church's impact to decrease? That's the question I want to look at today. Has this pandemic decreased the church's effectiveness? And this person would say yes, but I have to respectfully disagree and say no. In fact, absolutely not. It may have changed some things. It may look different than what we like and what we prefer, but I think God is using His church in powerful, powerful ways. And when I walked away from this conversation, I went home and I kind of journaled and I started thinking about in what ways has God used Crossview Church during this pandemic? And I tell you, the list started flowing, and I was just blown away by looking at all the things that God did during this time. It's been absolutely incredible. And maybe our idea of church has been shaped or changed a little bit, but make no mistake, God is moving, and He's doing incredible things during this time. I want to share some of the things that I wrote down with you so you can be encouraged and you can know that God is moving during this time of pandemic. But I want to be careful. Psalm 115:1 says, not to us, but to your name, Lord, be the glory. God moved and has done all these things. Everything I listed down here is a work of God where He's used our church to do His will. It's not a time for us to pat ourselves on the back or say, hey, look at the great things we've done. God forbid that happen, but let us glorify God through these things and what He has done. But it's pretty exciting to see. So from March of 2020 till now, October 2020, here are the things that came to my mind, and I'm just one person, that God has done during this time. We've seen 3 people give their lives to Jesus Christ for the first time ever. 3 people said, I want to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, and they gave their lives to Christ. Several others have recommitted their lives to Christ, and those are just some of the ones we know about. We have no idea what else God has done in the hearts of people who have encountered our services either in person or online. We joined a statewide time to pray and fast, joining with other churches around the state to pray and fast during this time of pandemic, that God would heal people from this virus, that He would stop this virus, and that He would have the church be engaged during this time. And that day long of prayer and fasting led to a prayer meeting we started online on Facebook, where we had at times over 50 people participate and pray. We've never had a prayer meeting with that many people engaged and attended ever. God put it in our hearts to pray during this time, and that's no small thing. I've seen at least 9 people recommit to not only follow God, but to have their families follow God, to teach their families the ways of God, to build their home in a way that God wanted it built, to honor and glorify Him. There's been a turning and a readjusting of priorities that we've seen in hearts of families. We've provided food and clothing and school supplies to people in need in our area, people who've been economically disadvantaged who can't afford those things because of this pandemic. And if they were in that spot before the pandemic, this pandemic made it worse. And as the church, we were able to come in and help provide the much needed things in critical times in people's lives. We've partnered with organizations in our city that do the same thing and have not created a new wheel, but have helped be a part of what they're doing and given them some encouragement and some assistance to be able to do that. We were able to give a sizable gift to Compassion International to help the families affected by this pandemic at our partner site in Bolivia. We partner with a Compassion International Child Center there that was affected in major ways through this pandemic, and we were able to step in. And one of the reports we got back said, in fact, they believe we saved lives by doing what we did. And that's a praise to God that He was able to give us the means to do that. We provided much needed care to those facing extremely difficult things during this pandemic. From March to October, I think of a few different people in our church family who have endured extremely, extremely difficult things. And as the church, we've been able to come alongside them and walk with them the best we could to share God's love with them. And the pandemic did not take that away. We were able to help our public school system in our city as they've adjusted to a crazy time and getting ready for what was ahead for the upcoming school year. God provided financially to keep us going, so we're able to do these things. Not once were we lacking because He kept that going. He gave us people gifted in administration to keep things moving and going under a weird pandemic time. Our online presence has been established and grown. We're now able to live stream our services, which we weren't able to do before. And the quality of what we've been able to do via video has increased exponentially. We have more people checking out Crossview Church through our online streaming than we ever have before. In fact, that led us to be able to broadcast our sermons at New Lisbon Correctional Institution, where they take our sermons on Sunday morning and they broadcast them in the day rooms and the different cells with the potential of reaching over 1,000 inmates with the gospel of Jesus Christ. We relaunched our life group ministry. And now we realize in this pandemic, the church has got to get smaller. We have to get into groups where we can disciple one another and care for one another, seeing how long, we don't know how long this thing's going to go on. And so we needed to do that. And over 117 people are participating in our life group ministry. And our life group ministry is stronger now than it ever has been before. God is moving in powerful ways. Our student ministry adapted to a whole new way of doing ministry. They went outside to a park, and the format of teaching has changed, and it's reaching and it's been effective in students' lives as students are being taught the Word of God, and they're being modeled through leaders of what that looks like. We were able to send middle school students to a retreat this last weekend where they were in God's presence together, and they grew spiritually because of it. Our children's ministry hasn't stopped either. It's looked really different, but we provided tools to parents online through online devotionals and different things that parents have given us feedback and thanked us and said that God's doing something in their kids. And we've even heard reports of kids loving to watch our worship services online, that God's creating a hunger in them for worship, and that's a powerful thing. Our outdoor services brought people to Crossview Church that didn't even know we were here. We had people who were in the parking lot of Pick and Save who came over. There's one individual who was ready to commit suicide, and we were able to step in, and they gave their life to Jesus, and then we were able to bring them into some assistance to get them counseling and get them help. God turned a life around that day. He's moving, and He keeps moving. Through all this time, there was never a Sunday morning that we did not have an opportunity to worship. You may say, well, you weren't able to come in the doors Sunday morning, but every single Sunday, and even when we were outdoors and we had bad weather, every single Sunday, we, through online means, had an opportunity to gather together remotely and worship God. We never, ever stopped. And that's an incredible thing. It may not be how we preferred it. It may not have been how we liked it. We may be too attached to how church was done before. But has this pandemic decreased the church's effectiveness? No way. No way. The church is moving. God is moving through His church. And I tell you what, I think an argument could be made. When we look at March of 2020 to October 2020, it could be the most effective time we've ever seen as Crossview Church in our history. Because God did so many amazing things. And this is just the things I know about. He did a lot more than that. He did so many things that I'm not even aware of. And then think about, this is just Crossview Church. Think about how He used all the other churches. They have their story too, of how God moved in their church. The Church of Jesus Christ globally is more effective now than it ever has been. Because Jesus said, I will build my church, and not a pandemic or the gates of hell will prevail against it. The church is moving because God is moving through His church. So how is God glorified in a pandemic? He's glorified when we let go of our preferences and let go of our comforts and allow Him to shape us and mold us into what's on His heart and what's on His mind. I encourage you to take Psalm 139, verses 23 and 24. This is kind of a verse that helps shape your heart to what God's desires are and helps you let go of your personal preferences and adapt your heart to God's. Psalm 139, 23, 24 says, "Search me, O God." It's a prayer. It says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. If there's any offensive way in me, lead me to the way of everlasting." It's a prayer that says, God, look at my heart and look at all the stuff that's in it. And if there's anything that's offensive to you, God, put your finger on it that I could ask forgiveness for that. And I could say, God, please forgive me. And I can turn my heart to your ways and walk with you. See, if we do that as the people of God during this pandemic, God will be glorified and he will do amazing things. Be encouraged, Crossview Church. God is moving, and let's be a part of it.